Peter saw that there was a museum, a traveling installation museum of failure. And it's a great success.
Really? No, really? Really? No, really? Really?
Really?
No, really. We don't know. We'll find out how much of a success it actually is. But we wanted to have on the guy.
There's an oxymoron there. I don't, and I'm sorry, did I use a word you're not familiar with? Oxymoron?
Oh, no, I know both of them.
Okay.
Oxy is the stuff used to clean shirts, and moron, I think, goes without saying.
Oxy is what I take every time I have to work with you.
Hey,
bing.
Kids at home, he did not mean that.
No.
He did not mean that.
Don't do drugs.
So,
yes, please.
We're going to get to
introduce our
Dr.
guest.
West. So Dr. West is the founder of the Museum of Failure. And what's great about it is he misspelled the word museum when he applied to register for the domain name. It's so right on point. But you're a doctor, obviously, so there's a bit of psychology involved in this, and it's not just about failure. But thank you for coming on, and it's love having you and finding out about the museum, sir.
Great, thanks for inviting me.
Dr. West, before we dive into the Museum of Failure, you had another venture, and I don't know if it was a success or a failure, but I'm equally intrigued. The Museum of Disgusting Foods. What was that all about?
Well, I started Museum of Failure in 2017, and it was so much fun, and it was so successful, ironically enough. So I thought I want to do something more, and I've always enjoyed. I'm half Icelandic, and I enjoyed having tourists or visitors come to Iceland, and then I would give them rotten shark, and I would tell them it's really disgusting. I give it to friends and family and say, yeah, this is traditional, real Icelandic food. And as a kid, I would give it to them and say, I eat this every day, and they taste it and they'd vomit, and I thought that was the most fun thing ever.
You're a blast, may I say. First of all, maybe everybody's happy you left Sweden.
What are we doing?
What kind of game is that? Wow.
Well, who have you invited onto our program? This is a man that's giving rotten shit.
You're asking me about
I love this.
Yes, of course. No, please. I didn't mean to interrupt, and let's certainly set up a lunch date when this is done.
And here's a great wine that goes with rotten shark.
Yeah.
It's actually called Black Death.
Is it an actual thing that people have to eat? Is sort of a fermented shark as a...
Yeah, it's twice fermented, so it's really rotten. And they actually do eat it. Or they actually ate it, I guess, when they didn't have anything else to eat in Iceland. So it's a real thing in Iceland. So you should try it. The Anthony Bourdain described it as the worst thing he's ever tried in his life, and it tastes like it has the consistency of a urine-infested mattress and tastes the same.
Jeez, is that how they put it on the menu?
Wow.
We'll take two. We'll
Today's
share.
special.
That's amazing. So then the museum grew out of that?
Yeah, well, that was a disgusting food museum, and then the Museum of Failure came before disgusting food museum.
What other? Just I swear this is going to be largely about the Museum of Failure, but I'm just fascinated.
No, it doesn't matter.
What other major exhibits filled the Museum of Disgusting Food? What was like the top 10 must see?
So we have stinky tofu, which is one of my non-favorites. It's basically tofu that has been fermented, and the smell. Have you ever unscrewed a sink and the bottom, the drain of a sink, that's a kitchen sink?
Sure, yeah.
And there's like this slimy, brown, greenish substance there, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, imagine that as stinkier than that, but the same consistency. That's stinky tofu.
And you can put it on toast. That's the selling point.
I've actually eaten it. I ate it in China. They fry it, and it's actually pretty good. But when it comes straight out of the can, it's horrible.
Well, there's I actually eat all the time. There's a noodle that I believe is made from kelp. It has no calories whatsoever. So, and I can't remember. It's got a Japanese name, I believe. But when you open the bag, because it sits in some sort of liquid. When you open the bag, you go, this cannot be consumed. This is not, it smells like a bad fish product.
And then,
But once you drain it and rinse it and you cook it up, it's actually quite wonderful.
but by the way, a
it's,
segue here is, so somebody, for all of those horrible foods, some culture is used to that food and embraces that food. So, it's fascinating because I'm sure as you walk to the Gross Food Museum, you see different cultures that say that's that. But same thing with failure, right? Failure is perceived differently in different places, correct?
Absolutely. I like you trying to make the segue into Museum of Failure, but I just want to stop and take a little bit more about disgusting food.
Oh my gosh, the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to
unsegue.
No, I'm fascinated.
You know what that's called?
You're not going to repulse me.
No. It's called an unsegue. The man did an unsegue.
Which, by the way, what happened to the
fail.
segue?
I worked so damn hard, Doctor. I worked so hard to get you off of gross food and segue in. I handed it to you, and you went not going. I'm
You
not
know
going.
what?
Not going. Not
We're
going.
here for you, sir. You go where you want to
All
go.
right, an unsegue. Make a note of that.
You ride your Segway. You want to go back to the Museum of Disgusting Food? Let's go there on the Segway.
Hilarious.
Go ahead. Yes, tell us
All
more.
right, so I just wanted to say that because you mentioned the different cultures of what's disgusting and what's delicious varies. Some of the American items in the museum, the Disgusting Food Museum, is, for example, root beer. Nobody outside the United States likes root beer.
Really?
Like
Ding. Are
Yeah.
you serious?
I'm not a fan.
No,
Not a
come
fan of
on.
root beer. Not a fan of root beer.
Oh my
Swedes,
God.
Most of the Europeans, they taste root beer and they spit it out and they say it tastes like toothpaste. Blah.
Well, okay.
Okay,
I'll
but
give
when
you
you're comparing
that.
root beer to an unscrewed sink bottom, there's a bit of a difference there, you know? One's like a hazmat suit and the other is maybe
Yeah.
a beverage you don't like
Yeah,
that
right,
much. It's
yeah,
a whole
yeah.
different thing.
All right. I'm done with this.
This is what you dragged us
Let's
back
talk
into
about
food?
Museum of Failure. Come
The
on.
man
You know
dragged
what?
us back into
his
here.
Segue, his unsegue
Was a failure.
Was a failure.
Was a
So
failure.
now we're back on top.
A man who doesn't want to promote the thing he's on to promote. So the museum. There's a bigger point in the museum about failure that we'll get to, but the items that are in there, I think people would love to hear the specific items because they're fascinating. These huge companies that invested so much money to come up with stuff that's just so wrong in retrospect. You look at them. Why don't you give us some of those, Dr. West?
I mean, some of the items, if we were talking about food earlier, we have Olestra from 96. Do you remember that?
God.
David Letterman
yes.
did an episode where he talked about
my
Olestra
God.
chips, and he said the slogan was, Olestra, I'm sitting in it.
So for those who don't remember Olestra, it was Procter Gamble had developed a 0-calorie fat substitute. So
Right.
finally, you can eat as much junk food as you want to without getting fat. So yay, hallelujah, good stuff. Except that it caused diarrhea.
Yeah.
Um,
I believe
and then-
I believe the phrase was mild, uncontrollable diarrhea, which was three words I didn't know could be
And by the
be
way-
side by side in the same sentence.
Anytime I'm told, anytime I'm
was told
told,
this-
do not eat this product and wear light-colored pants,
Yeah. Or eat or wear light colored pants.
or wear light-colored
Right.
pants, you go, I'm out. I think I'm out.
Well, I found when I was doing research on it that someone had cleverly because diarrhea is not something you really want to have associated with your food product. So that some clever copywriters rebranded diarrhea and instead started calling it may cause, quote, anal leakage.
Yes. Which is
Much better.
highly preferable.
You know what's amazing
Highly
to me, though,
preferable
Doctor?
phrase.
What's fascinating, I wonder if it's going to be a theme in the other products you mentioned. You know, I always picture the conference room. When they're about to release it, they got 10 people sitting around and they go, Hal, anybody's here why it's not ready yet? Anal leakage. Anybody else and then they went, anybody have a problem with that?
Right, yeah.
And they went, no, we're in.
I don't see any reason to slow down production just for that.
Let's get it.
Let's go to
get it
market.
going.
We'll work it out when it's out there.
How did they have that? What was that conversation? What was that choice?
Yeah.
And how many people are responsible for saying, okay, let's get this out there?
In fairness, it only affected 9 out of 10 users.
So there's this one guy today going, I can't believe my favorite chip is no longer here, and I'm impervious
Right.
to explosive diarrhea. As a matter of fact, I've been constipated for 12 years. This was the only thing that freed me up was Olestra. So
So what else would be in there? Are there other food products? as
There's
well?
other. I mean, there's the classics, Crystal Pepsi and New Coke. There's
Talk about your McDonald's fail, because Jason, you can add this to the
Yes,
museum.
that's
Jason
true.
had a huge fail.
What's your McDonald's fail? We'll compare. I don't think mine is in your museum, but go ahead.
Give me your McDonald's fail. I'm curious now.
Okay, you go first, and then I'll tell you mine.
So the item we have in the museum is the Arch Deluxe, which was apparently one of the biggest failures in fast food. And McDonald's put millions of dollars into developing it. It was a luxury burger for adults, and their advertisements were so basically people at the time, and probably still not today, don't want to go to McDonald's for a luxury burger. So that was a failure. But there was also that the advertisement had children eating the Arch Deluxe and spitting it out.
Oh,
Not such a good-
interesting.
Arch
Interesting.
Deluxe.
Great.
I do get emails every now and then saying, "Oh, hey, whatever happened to that? I want it back. I actually liked it." And
Yeah.
I'm like, you probably liked everything else at the museum too.
Yeah.
spitting
Here's
it
mine.
out.
So I was hired when I was in my 20s, I believe, because I still lived in New York, to be the singing, dancing spokesperson for a huge new McDonald's product called the McDLT. And what this was it was a pretty much standard McDonald's hamburger, but they had determined that the biggest issue, the biggest complaint, was that when you make a hamburger and you put your crisp lettuce and tomato into the hamburger and then it sits under the warming tray, the lettuce and the tomato become unappetizing because they're no longer crisp and cool. So McDonald's developed this 2-section styrofoam box, and the selling point was it keeps the hot hot and the cool cool. So one half of a bun and the hamburger would go on one side, and then on the other side was the other half of the bun with your lettuce and tomato. Right. Now, if you assembled it that way, closed the lid, and kept the box absolutely level, and handed it to the patron that way, and they took it to their table or their car, and they opened it that way, you still would have the problem of, how do I get these two halves together without creating a smorgasbord? But what usually happened is they would make the sandwich this way, and then they would turn the box vertically to put it in the bag, and whatever was in the top section would drip down into the bottom section. It was a disaster. We released the product. There was a song that lives on the internet, the McDLT song, in which I am.
Are we going to
am
get sued if you
featured.
do it?
And I don't think so. It was talking lettuce and tomato on the cool side. At the cool, it stays cool. The new McDLT. It was the song. Was the highlight of the product. And I think it ran less than one full commercial cycle, so that's less than 3 months.
And everybody rejected
And
it.
I got a little
Wow.
call from McDonald's saying, "Thank you for your service."
And you thought at the time, I'm retiring on this.
I thought this is going to
McDonald's.
be,
Oh my God.
I'm going to be the McDLT guy. I was a little theater actor in New York, and I thought I'm set for life. And
How
then
sad.
It all went with the hamburger.
By the way, Jason loves Oreos and always talks about amazing how many flavors there are. The big failed flavor was?
Well, the Oreos, we have Oreos at the museum, a lot of the different flavors. Not so much to say like, hey, and laugh at like which flavors failed, although I have a few. But more to show how they approach innovation. Like they're just like, we're going to try all kinds of crazy flavors and we'll see which of them stick, which one people buy.
right.
So they're obviously creating crazy flavors to get publicity and get people to talk about it. But some of it is also, they're testing out new flavors, and that's a great way to sort of test the market.
I'm guessing the root beer one, not such a big seller overseas?
No, the one that's the most interesting is Oreos with spicy barbecue chicken flavor.
No, come on.
Dinner and dessert at one sitting.
Come on, really, dang, spicy barbecue.
Yeah, spicy. They're actually, they taste like when those instant noodle, those cheap instant noodles.
Yeah.
The little package that comes with it.
Yes,
the little
I do.
Flavor pack. So if you dip your finger in that and taste it, that's what they tasted like.
And where is the flavoring all in the cream filling, or are they infusing it in the outer cookie crust as well?
They're sophisticated. They keep it all in the
It's
filling,
all so you can fail that way.
So now you have to add barbecue chicken and sauce between two chocolate wafers.
Yeah.
What the hell?
But you know
is
something,
happening?
Jason? As I'm hearing that, I'm thinking somebody tried that and went, you know what? This is a thing.
Yeah, again.
Well,
it got-
to be
it got passed.
to be fair to Oreos, I bought those in Shanghai.
My favorite thing that I saw in your museum is the Euro Club, the golf club that you can also urinate into. So if you're in the golf course and you have to go, and you're in your middle, but think about this.
Yeah.
You're 78 years old. You have all you can do
You're
to walk around the
78
golf
years old,
course.
Go on the green.
Yeah, well, I think that's what messed this up. That people went to a tree in the corner and went, why am I peeing in a club?
By the way, if you're
Small
78,
target. Small
you getting
target.
it? I was going to
yeah,
say,
your urine is
You
like
know,
a broken
you got
sprinkler head.
the
It's everywhere.
prostate's
Yeah,
a
I know.
little bit. Yes, exactly.
It's going pop, tap, 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 tap. Yeah. Okay.
There's nothing wrong with the Euro Club. I mean, it's a great idea. Like you have to urinate. You're on a big field, golf course. You just unscrew this fake golf club and urinate in it. What was interesting about it? Was the commercials, which were sort of in between, like funny and ridiculous, and actually being serious. So you didn't really know, are they serious or are they joking? And one of the things that the golf club, so it had like a little towel, a green towel with it. So in the ad it says, and if you're playing golf with lady golfers, you have to use the privacy towel. You clip on this towel onto your belt. And then you fumble under the towel and urinate into the golf club. That's hilarious.
And by the time you get the towel, I could have made it into the clubhouse.
I'm also thinking someone's going to criticize my grip. You know,
Hey, can I borrow your 5-iron? Maybe not so much.
It's not really a wood.
What was it? Was it putter or was it a driver?
I'd say it's unknown.
Unknown.
Wow.
Before we move to the underlying issue, the bigger issue about failure and creativity, et cetera, any other items that stick out that people really love? I mean, there are over 150 items in the museum.
People, everybody has their own favorites. So the Ford Edsel is popular. We have some medical mishaps. They're interesting, like a lobotomy tool. That's quite interesting. We have the Apple Newton, one of the sort of iconic failures of the 1990s, and the Sony Betamax. Do you guys remember the Betamax?
Of course.
I do. Wait, can you go back one? What was the Apple Newton? I don't recall that.
The Apple Newton was, I think it was like early 90s. It was the first personal digital assistant. So the kick-ass feature, or like the main feature of this device, was that you could just write with a stylus onto the screen to enter data.
Oh, like a Palm Pilot is what I had.
It's the way ahead of its time, in a way.
It was just the same sort of similar time there but Apple was like, their device was awesome, except for the fact that it didn't work.
Okay.
And again, made it to market.
May I say something, though, about, because you brought up the Edsel, and I knew we were going to segue from talking about failures into success and the need to have failure to get to success. So Roy Brown Jr., I wanted to see the guy who designed the Edsel. He designed the Edsel, but he also, to the point, not only didn't they fire him, but he was transferred to England, where he designed the Ford Cortina, which was the best-selling car in Great Britain. He returned to Detroit in 1966 and helped design the Ford Econoline van, which also really popular. So these people believed in him enough that even though he had this huge failure, they allowed him to continue designing stuff, and he had huge success.
But the Edsel apparently was mostly a failure, as I understand it, because of Edsel Ford. That Edsel Ford was the son of Henry Ford.
Yeah.
And that somehow he was really the guy who was pushing for this line and pushing for this design.
That I don't know. I know that the
because
thing
there was some docudrama about the Ford, the whole Ford dynasty there.
I think the thing was too expensive. I think it didn't.
Yeah,
it didn't capture the public, because even if Edsel Ford pushed it, if the public doesn't like it, they ain't buying it, and they didn't buy it.
Boy, you guys really are experts on everything, aren't you?
Well,
we're not experts on anything.
we haven't started talking about our own
but
failures.
you know what? We're fascinated, which is why I want to have you on and talk about the culture of failure.
Well, I just want to add, I was being ironic there about the Edsel, because you're probably sort of right, but mostly wrong. The Edsel failed because of mainly two things. One was that people were just confused. Is it an expensive car or is it a cheap car? There were so many versions of it. and it was so overhyped. The Ford Edsel even had its own sort of entertainment TV show with Frank Sinatra and other big
Oh,
stars.
so they really
at the
pushed
time.
it.
Yeah.
They really hyped it. And then one of the most funny reasons why it failed is because the grille on the Edsel is vertical rather than horizontal, like a regular car.
Right.
If you can imagine that, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
turned on its side. And this is like the 1950s in the United States, so people found it indecent because it reminded them of female genitalia.
Oh, sure.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow and wow.
Sure.
I got to check this out now and look at it.
A
See
real rival for the Batmobile,
Wow.
I'm guessing.
And by the way, Chevy's watching this closely because they thought if people are liking
this goes.
we got to change the grill on every car we do. That's amazing. But what more amazing is he said, you guys are experts, and then showed us we were totally wrong.
Yeah, well, yeah. Again, keeping on
He
theme.
should be in the criticism episode.
Right, exactly.
So failure, I know that you talk about that a lot, that a big part of this museum is understanding failure and failure in our culture, correct? So why don't you address that a little bit about how companies embrace failure and I'm fascinated with the geography, how failure causes shame in different, I heard you talk, I watched one of your talks about how different cultures, man, failure is treated really differently.
So, I mean, failure, obviously, I think failure is fascinating because I've been doing it for a while. We're interested in it for a while. But I mean, one thing that's fascinating is the paradox. On the one hand, society says, hey, we really want you to innovate. We look up to entrepreneurs who take risks. All this is fantastic. But then at the same time, society stigmatizes failure. So there's like, we want you to do it, but if it doesn't work out, we're going to punish you in some way or judge you.
Right.
So that's one element of it. The other is that there is something, like you said, that companies, when they embrace failure, there's not really that many companies that do actually embrace failure. But some companies are much better at taking risks and being willing to accept that failure is necessary for any kind of innovation or progress. So that's also the aim of the museum, to sort of drive home that point that we have to accept failure if we want. We got to take the bad with the good. We can't just have the good.
But it's inherent, like in science. I know in doing
Science
medicine,
is fueled by failure.
right? It's all about eliminating what it's not to get closer to what it is, and you rely on failure after failure. As long as you learn from the failure and adjust,
Exactly.
you're getting closer to what the answer is.
Well, to that extent, Dr. West, are you aware of anything that began as a completely abject failure and was turned around to become a success? Is there anything that jumps out like that?
I mean, there are the sort of examples that everybody knows about with the Post-it note and Viagra, which both were sort of unexpected successes. But I mean, I often get approached by both journalists and the corporate side, where they say, hey, we really want you to give a talk, or we want to come visit the museum or something, but we'd like to focus on the failures that lead to something successful.
Right.
And I always resist that, because I think that's sort of talking about failure from within the narrative of success. And I think there's failure in and of itself, even when it doesn't lead to success, is interesting also, and should also deserve some attention.
Mm-hmm.
So like all these, I got so tired of these success. I was reading so much about innovation and entrepreneurship, and I got so tired of these successful, often guys up on a stage, and they're like, look at me, I'm so rich and successful. And then they tell their success stories, and they always have shiny teeth. And they, it gets boring after a while. They're all the same. They're all identical, and it's not interesting. Whereas the failures actually, they're authentic. They're real. They haven't been, there's no spin doctors there or corporate types trying to curate it.
Well, and to your point, what you just said, one of the things that bothers me about failure is that every guy gets up and they romanticize failure.
Yeah.
It's the best thing. I would have never gotten here if I didn't fail it. And they love telling that story. Mm-hmm. And I go, we have a family of failures, and it ain't so romantic, okay? No. My uncle was a failure, and there is no success story there.
Yeah.
So you don't want to romanticize it. You want to kind of understand it and understand how to move on from it.
Well, I tell a story to in my own speaking, I was in a big failure. What was considered a failure. My Broadway debut was directed by Hal Prince and was written by Stephen Sondheim, and legendary figures of the American theater in the 20th century. But the show Merrily We Roll Along was a failure, a critical failure and a popular failure, and But I then go on to say, I believe the very next show that Stephen Sondheim wrote was Sunday in the Park with George, which everybody said was going to fail and wound up winning the Pulitzer Prize that year and has become one of his most successful and most revered pieces of writing. So in that case, you have. I never asked Steve about was the failure of Merrily any kind, because Sunday in the Park with George is about a misunderstood artist,
right? Was it that?
What did that experience give you an insight that you wouldn't have had otherwise? So who knows? But yeah.
Well, and then failures like Michael Cimino, Heaven's Gate, was deemed one of the worst failures in movie history, and then they got a standing ovation just a couple of years ago at Venice with the director's cut, and now it's lauded as this amazing film. So a failure that became in itself, and then Jason's, if you want to talk about a failure, Doctor, the lowest scoring pilot in NBC history was Seinfeld.
Oh.
Yeah, you can't get worse than that. You want to add to the museum, by the way, we can consult.
So, Dr. West, for something to be considered a sort of notable failure or a great failure, I mean, when excuse me, when Coke or Pepsi makes a product and it fails, we tend to recognize that because they've attained such a level of success that the misses make news. Is part of being a notable failure that you have to have, that it is in the chain of a number of great successes? Do you have to fall from a great height to be a notable failure, or are there casual everyday failures that have become notable in and of themselves?
That's an excellent question. Sorry. That was contagious.
Yes, we have the same allergies, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent question or point, because what makes something a notable failure is often because either it's something that's famous in and of itself, or a famous person, or a reputable company, or sometimes it's because something is overhyped. So it doesn't always have to be this fantastically successful Apple or Coca-Cola or some super celebrity. It can also just be something that has been hyped or gone viral. There was a I think it was last year, somebody on TikTok got famous overnight for a pink sauce. It's like a gravy or something, and it's purple or pink, and it just it exploded overnight and became a massive success. And all this is within a couple of weeks, and then they had production issues and nothing worked, and people were complaining, and it died equally, as quickly as it bloomed. So I mean, and nobody knew anything about that, 2 weeks earlier. So I think it has to do with expectations, and then obviously, like you said, how far have they fallen?
Yeah. And I'm sorry, just one more thing, Peter. Does the museum really focus on sort of products that have failed, or are there also, personal marriages, partnerships, expeditions? Does it get into that kind of failure as well, or is it really product centric?
Yeah, because we like to have something to display. Then most of the items at the museum are consumer products,
right?
Things. We have digital failures. I really wanted to do some ideological failures, without being too political, or grander sort of, notions and sort of ideas of how things are, like how they affect and really influence, how we do things, and also cause a lot of problems. But you're right, most of the items are physical products.
Can you example
most of them are consumer products?
Can you example one of the things that you were thinking of, as you say, like a notion or that you haven't been able to do yet?
I mean, the reason I haven't done it because it's so provocative and everybody has an opinion. Like I said, I wasn't going to be political, but I mean, there's certain. So I mean, you can argue that, capitalism versus communism, they haven't been terribly successful in different ways.
Gotcha.
You can argue. I mean, I had a huge argument with an architect friend of mine who says that postmodernism within architecture is an absolute complete failure, and nobody wants to live in or work in these ugly modernistic houses or buildings. And he had a bunch of research to support that. So that could be a possible sort of postmodernism in architecture. Could be something.
What about, you're going to have to build a crypto wing at some point, don't you think?
Yeah, we have a
NFTs and crypto.
Failure in progress. So we've got crypto.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for addressing it.
Yeah.
And the other, before we go, I just want to ask you about the change in failure, because I think you mentioned it and you notice it in Silicon Valley. Every venture capitalist I've ever talked to in my life goes, oh, our business, you invest in 10 things, 8 are going to fail, 1's going to do okay, and then 1's a huge hit. Their whole business is built on failure and fast failure. Like the better it goes, I mean, people go, well, how did Theranos happen? And you go, because people made money on Theranos. The guys who told you to invest in it made a lot of money. They made commissions and stuff. And how did this happen? Well, they pitched it and they weren't that worried about it being successful. They didn't even know the test didn't exist. Yeah. And yet people got out and made money. So what do you think about that, the fast failure today and the whole Silicon Valley phenomenon?
Well, Silicon Valley is really good at embracing failure and not sort of holding it against you as a business person. So they're willing to give people second and third and fourth chances. But the problem with Silicon Valley and this fail fast mentality, fail fast often and cheaply, is that they're not very good at learning from their failures. So they do the same mistakes and failures over and over again, and it costs them and everyone else a lot of money. We do have Theranos in the museum, but it's sort of it's fraud and it's also failure, and it's a failure from the perspective of, you know, like what were these pharmacy chains and these big badass sort of A-level investors throwing money at a product that didn't exist
for a long time.
For a very long time.
It's incredible. Nobody said, let me see it. Let it work. Oh my God.
We're going to pay you $500 million. Can we at least see what we're investing in?
And they had credible board and all. Before we go, spray-on condom didn't work because?
Because you spray it on and you have to wait 5 or 10 minutes for it to dry.
Also, for some of us, you have to use a whole can. I mean, just to, you know, for coverage. For some people. I'm not saying who.
This would be a good time to wrap, wouldn't it? Doctor, thank you for being on. Where's the museum right now? And is it coming to LA again, I hope?
It's in New York right now. It's there for another couple of months. It's already been in Los Angeles, but it was so popular in Los Angeles, I think it'll come back.
You don't know?
No, I'm the last to know these things.
Wow. I guess they don't trust him.
Because he's not in charge of that.
In your professional opinion, this interview, success, failure, what do you think?
Great success. I thought it was fun.
Well, there you go.
There we go.
My favorite part of this, though, was the unsegue. I'll never forget that. You just went for it. It was terrific.
It's the U-turn. It's the U-seg.
And I'll give you this. In the words of Conan O'Brien, Conan O'Brien gave a commencement at Dartmouth shortly after being fired as the host of The Tonight Show. And he said, though you should not fear failure, you should do your very best to avoid it at all costs. So, which is a great way to go. Thank you for being on with us, Dr. West.
I like what you do. I like the disgusting foods. I like the failure. I like you're my kind of museum. I got to tell you.
So that was pretty fascinating. The Museum of Failure. We're joined now by Guggenheim, who corrects.
Producer David Guggenheim. He needs a theme.
I have a theme.
What's your theme?
Da, 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 da. I don't know. I have a theme.
That's a theme. That's a ditty. That's not a theme.
What the hell are you guys doing? What are you doing?
Wow.
Anyway, he's here to correct and inform as we go on. But we wanted now that the doctor has left, I want to just talk about the bigger issue, I think, with failure is that we do romanticize it. And I think this all starts at school. This is why people are scared to get up and talk. As soon as you were shut down for saying something stupid in school, or other kids are mean to you for saying something, all of a sudden, you're not going to go out there and push the envelope. Because society is pretty conformist in the way that it thinks. You know what I mean, for the most part? So all of a sudden, you're the guy at work who's going to take a risk to push the envelope. We talked about blameless culture, and the doctor said there are workplaces that are trying to do a blameless culture.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works because it's always got to be Hal's fault. And offices are really political. So when something fails, the first thing is, whose fault is it? Nobody says, Don't worry about it. Let's move on. This is okay. Usually there's hell to pay. And you do everything you can to whisper in the right person's ear whose fault it was so they don't blame you.
Well, but you're talking about romanticizing failure, where somebody gets up who is currently having a success and goes, "What it took me to get here,
exactly.
I thank the failures."
Culture
and
romanticizes
to me,
it.
I don't think that's romanticizing it. I actually think there is a sense of either true or false humility in that, because when you're riding high, if you're smart, you don't want to set yourself up for criticism at that level. You want to be appreciated and embraced rather than create something that's going to distance you from people. So you don't go, I hit it now, I'm an A+ now.
But
so you go, this one worked out, but I got to tell you, I've got 20 that didn't. And I think it is true self-humility, but I also think it's a little bit of a protective thing to go, listen, yes, this one worked. Don't begrudge me.
That may be true, but you never get to hear the guy going, I've been a continuous failure. I'm waiting. Hasn't happened yet.
If I ever win an Emmy,
you say, this is a mistake. Well, my speech, if I ever want
clearly this is a mistake.
My speech is, I bet I can never do this again. Thank you.
Right.
Because that's how we grew up.
Right.
I grew up with generations of failure. And by the way, there are 8 million books with failure in the title. Tell me if these are real books or fake books. Ready?
All right, I'm ready.
The Gift of Failure. True or false?
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Value of Failure.
Probably true.
Fueled by Failure.
Probably true.
Ending Failure.
Yeah.
You're failing just like your father and your Uncle Harold.
That's a Peter Tilden title, if ever I heard it.
Failure, schmailure, eat your eggs.
Yeah. You're rabbi.
I'm not a failure. I'm not a failure. I'm just unlucky.
Sure.
How to turn a failure into yet another failure, guaranteed.
Oh, boy. Someone's been up writing. That's why you didn't answer the phone
There
last
are
night.
so many, and this is the Tony Robbins thing about the implication is that you're not enough.
Yeah, but you know what?
All of that stuff is we're not enough. You're a failure. And if you just walk on hot coals
Yeah.
or sit in a sweat lodge, you are going to go to the moon, friend, and you go, or I'm going to burn my feet and have to go to the hospital,
Yeah.
which has happened,
Yeah.
or I'm going to pass out and die at the sweat lodge, which has happened. So people are so, they so want the success. They so want to change.
Well, they want to feel that they can be I think that's more about people wanting to be a better version of themselves, not necessarily.
Because you're a...
Well, because
Oh,
you feel
please.
incomplete. I don't know that is directly tied to failure. Listen, I've watched enough documentaries about people like Anthony Robbins and their seminars. There are a goodly faction of people who are doing quite well there, who just personally feel they are not doing quite well.
Let's follow them
But
now, years from now.
The people I love to follow are here's what I love. I think people enjoy a certain kind of failure because when I go on YouTube, the first thing that comes up on my YouTube, Fail Army. That's the site, Fail Army. And every week, every 2 weeks, they post compilation videos of people just eating it, just
I'm writing down
wiping
Fail
out.
Army. Isn't that amazing?
Wiping out.
There's a whole
we print the
entertainment...
Darwin Award books
Right,
that
right.
are given for people that, I mean, how tragic is this? People who have died in ridiculous ways, usually created by their own hand. The one that I remember so well was a gentleman who died because he was living alone in a cabin. It was cold. He had a fire going. He was drinking heavily. When he ran out of alcohol, he wasn't satisfied. So he looked at his kerosene lamp, drank the kerosene. It made him sick. He threw up into the fireplace, and the fumes backed up, and he blew out his lungs and killed himself. And I go, you gotta... Tragic,
Dude,
but my
what a
God,
story the family has to tell.
A lot of people die. I don't talk about
They're
them
just
on a
waiting.
podcast,
The family must be waiting for somebody to ask us, how did he die?
Yeah,
You want to hear it?
yeah.
So here we go.
Here's the story.
Wow. And so the other part of this is Broadway. I did radio, and I got critiqued. Laurie knows this.
And you
Use
and
the
I have
word.
done TV.
Yeah, but in radio, it used to be you got the rating book every quarter. Then it was every week. Then it was every month. Then it was every week. Then it's hour by hour.
Yeah.
So you can know if you're tanking.
You're bad now. You're bad now. You're a little
bad
better.
now,
Oh, you're
right.
bad again.
And you go into a program director's office who maybe doesn't know anything,
Right.
and is going to critique you, and you have to listen to tapes of yourself.
Yeah.
It's really, really tough being confronted with that. And I know at Broadway, you told me that on opening night, if the review is good, you're okay. If the opening night review is bad, it's hell because you still got to do the show for another couple weeks.
Well, there's nothing worse than opening your show and, not one bad review, although the New York Times is still, king of the
thing.
castle.
Yeah.
But if the general response, I did a show in 1984 called The Rink. It was a Kander and Ebb musical, and it starred Chita Rivera and Liza Minnelli, and it was one of the few and only times I was ever fooled on an opening night, because I thought the show was really quite wonderful. I still think the show is really quite wonderful. We did workshops of it. We thought the workshops went great. We had, I think, 6 or 7 weeks of preview performances before critics were allowed to come. And I'm telling you, people loved it. They loved the songs. They surely loved the ladies. That was unmistakable star power.
And yet?
Standing ovations. We got to opening night, and I'm telling you, it was mixed to bad reviews. And the next audience came in the next night, and things that had normally been giant laughs and huge applause and tumbleweeds, because they had been told, you don't like
not
this.
good. Wow.
You don't like
How
this.
horrible was that?
And we did that show for 9 months. And if we had not had those two ladies who had enough star power that they could pull an audience in that was at least curious to see them, we would have closed that week. I can tell you, there are shows that have closed the day after their opening night. There have been shows that have closed without getting to an opening night.
Doing previews.
And that's the worst kind of failure, because that's not a critique failure. That's the audience, word of mouth, going, I just saw this thing. Do not spend your money there.
Tell the story of you doing a success. So Jason won a Tony Award. He's that. By the way, he is that good. If you get a chance, if you ever hear Jason on stage
Please stop.
again,
You're
and don't do it because
embarrassing
you're doing
me.
this,
Don't
but
do
if
it.
you ever see him on
Finish
stage,
your thought.
but he won a Tony. That's a major thing. Left the show as a conquering hero, and I'd never heard this story before recently, and the show needed you to come back.
Yeah, so this is just a lesson of, when you think you're a major success, somewhere you're a failure. So I do the show, Jerome Robbins Broadway. I win a Tony Award. A month later, I'm out of the show. My contract is up, and I had other things to do. I was replaced by a wonderful actor named Terrence Mann. Terry takes over the show, but about 2 weeks into his run, he got sick, and he couldn't do the show. And his understudy had only recently been hired and didn't know the part yet. So I get a desperate call from the Schubert organization going, can you please get us through the weekend? We need
Tony
you to
winner.
do 5 shows, just 5 shows. So I go back, the Tony Award winner returns. Oh, this audience, what a treat for them. Normally you hear there's an understudy on, there's a groan. You hear,
Can't believe
tonight,
who it is.
Terrence Mann is not here, but Tony Award winner. And the excitement, the enthusiasm. So I go back feeling I am all that and then some. I do the Saturday night show, and I have to go pick up my wife at her parents' apartment, which is crosstown. So understand, whatever I tell you now, 3 seconds of time, one way or the other, and what I'm about to tell you doesn't happen. I have to get on a bus. I go across town. I have to then walk the 3 or 4 blocks from where the bus left me off to get to my in-laws' building. They live on the 3rd floor. I don't take the elevator. I walk up the 3 flights of stairs. I go to the door, and the people that live across the hall for them are just going into their doorway. And as I walk to my in-laws' door, the only little snippet of their conversation I hear is, well, yeah, he was okay, but I would have loved to have seen Terrence Mann. God put me
To humble you,
outside
to
that
humble you,
door
to
at
humble you.
exactly that 3 seconds more, they're in their apartment. I never know
Tony
this happens.
Schmony. It doesn't matter. Before we go to Google Home, I just want to mention something. My son, I told him that we're doing this episode, and he said that he had gone to a shrink and at one time who recommended that he does a failure diary.
Oh, I call that a diary.
Where he writes down things that didn't work out, what happened after, how he felt, and what he learned from them.
Yes.
Failure diary. Do you
he
think
do it?
that's... I think he failed it. I think
He failed that.
he failed at that.
I understand that. I have a journal that I keep. It's not real. I don't think of it as a diary. It's one of these things you can buy them in the stores. It's 1 line a day. It's a book where each page is a calendar day, and it gives you 5 years worth. And you're supposed to write 1 line a day. Well, I have a very small font handwriting.
Yeah, by the way,
so
what
I
is
can
with
write
that?
more.
You can't read his writing. It's like a point
I
oh font.
don't know what I learned how to do.
I've
that
never
when I was
seen-
a kid.
you're saving
And I-
paper? Saving
yeah, I'm saving
trees?
paper. Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
But what I've recently started doing, rather than saying, "Oh, today I did a thing, tomorrow I did a thing," I've started writing down the things to be grateful for.
Oh.
You know, and they're little things, little things. I mean, sometimes it's like, I think to move my fingers and my fingers move. You know, I had a cousin that died of ALS. I am not that, the ability to go, oh, wow, I can make that happen with a thought is something to be grateful for. So the idea of flipping that and going, yeah, let me look at the things that didn't go so well. Let me try and give it a little bit of distance and a clinical eye, and look at it objectively and go, why didn't it work? And you and I know, and this is, maybe this is a good place to end. You and I have worked on many projects together. We did my two most prominent television series, post Seinfeld, you and I created together. By the most common measure of success, they were not, the barometer, the most common barometer, Bob Patterson and Hit the Road did not succeed in that one didn't do a whole season, and the other one only did one season and out. So we could absolutely, by any barometer, say those were failures. But I also look at them and I go, A, I actually thought they were funny, and I thought they were good ideas, and I think they were well done. B, I got to do things I never would have done. You and I got to have that experience and grow our relationship. We put a lot of people to work. Two of our writers got married to each other because they met on our show. We got through 9/11 on the first one. I met people I would not have met. I learned things I would not have learned. When I look at both of those things, to me, they were very successful to me in my life. They just
your barometer's broken. Your barometer's broken. And
that's
by the
what
way,
I was going to say is you and I need to go into the barometer business because we are not making good barometers.
Yeah,
Our
I know.
barometer is broken.
It's totally broken. Next time I pitch you something, we got to go to somebody with a better barometer.
Yeah.
Guggenheim. Any final words?
Yes.
What we said wrong? What needs clarification?
Yes, I am your barometer.
You're our
Number one, the most important
our
thing.
human barometer.
Yes, the most important thing. I haven't gotten my T-shirt.
Well, I have to now. At the end of this episode, you are absolutely right, and I need to know if you're a medium, a large, or an extra large, and if you want more than one, because I had these specially
course.
made. And what you'll note, David, is
I'll take Peter's.
One of us cares to represent the show and to wear it with some pride, and the other one feels that a black hoodie in front of a black screen is the way to go. And one of them, I guess, takes a gift that is meaningful and goes, yeah, thank you very much, and it puts it in a drawer.
By the way, just reminding you, this is the man who writes a gratitude diary.
Yeah. And
I'm
I'm grateful that I'm not like Peter.
More negative thoughts than any human I know has a gratitude diary. You know how big his gratitude diary is the last 30 years? It's this thick.
Also, the McDeal team, I loved it at the time. I always loved the
You were the one.
system. I did. I was the guy.
All right.
Also, for people interested in following up on the idea, the Merrily We Roll Along, there was a documentary made. It's called The Best Worst Thing That Ever Could Have Happened. And
Yep.
so that
Are you in that?
That's
I
quite
am.
a romp.
Yep.
Yes. So people.
And I
should
will
check
also
it out.
say that Merrily We Roll Along has had many, many significant revivals over the 40 years since we did it. And it is coming back to Broadway again this fall in September of 23 with a new cast.
Shows a lot of ideas, I guess.
And I saw the show off Broadway when I was in New York. And, it's essentially in many ways the same
like
show
movies?
we did. But now it's a different time, a different expectation. And it has become, I think it's become inarguably. There's also the gentleman who filmed About a Boy, where he shot it over 18 years.
Right.
He is doing, because Merrily takes place over 20 years, he's filming a movie version of it over the next 20 years with Ben Platt and Beanie Feldstein.
So I got to write down it opens 20.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll write it down. The opening weekend. I'm
Coming
there.
soon.
We'll be on the red carpet. We won't know it, but we'll be on the red carpet. Thank you, Guggenheim. I want to thank Dr. West for coming on.
Wait, there's more.
There's
Don't
more.
dismiss. Why are you dismissing?
I'm grateful that you said that.
Oh,
I'm
my God.
really not. Go ahead.
There you go. The one thing I wanted to get to was Schadenfreude, which is basically when people get pleasure out of watching other people's failure. I thought that was an important.
Yes.
Yes, that's in the whole entertainment marketplace. Yeah.
Yes, it is, and especially talking about the videos that Jason watches on a regular basis, there actually been a study published in Neuropsychologia that shows why we oftentimes find humor or laugh when we encounter people failing or hurting or falling or whatever it is. And it oftentimes has to do with brain confusion, that our brain, as we're understanding or seeing facial reactions of people experience this, our brain is teetering between laughing and being horrified. And often subtle cues, like perhaps a funny musical track, will make our brain go in a certain way. Well, we will laugh.
Wow, it's cued that way.
Seemingly
Interesting.
inappropriate situation. And that is why sometimes people, when they find out that a loved one or a friend has passed away, they will actually react by laughing.
Emotional confusion.
Apparently, that is a neurological thing that should be understood and embraced as part of the human experience.
Wow.
Well, thank you, Dr. Google.
Thank you, sir.
Well, there you go. I Googled that.
Hopefully, we've done something successful today. If you think so, let us know at reallynoreally.com, our little website where you can leave us messages that I've never seen. I don't know how to get to that website.
Which is good, but
It's
you're
up.
buying shirts. Buy more shirts.
Thank you. If you're watching us on YouTube, remember to subscribe and like. And of course, we drop episodes every Tuesday. We'll be back, and you can catch us on the iHeart app, the Apple app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Of
Great
course.
success, Mr. Tillman.
Thank you, sir.
Great
and
success.
Dr. Samuel West, look up the Museum of Failure. You'll get a real kick out of the items that are in there. And he does a great TED Talk, too. So thank you, everybody.
And thank you, producer Laurie
Thank you,
Crimmy.
Oh, of course.
David
Of
Guggenheim.
course.
We'll see you next time.